There's something or someone back there. For sure. There's something or someone back there.
I don't know what that sound is.
There's something about being alone in the wilderness that makes your skin crawl. The eerie silence, the shadows shifting between trees, or someone watching you. Tonight, we're diving into real camping encounters that were caught on camera, and the first one, oh, it's going to give you the worst chills ever. Let's start with the haunting experience from Cursed Urban's terrifying forest adventure. Dan from Cursed Urban wasn't looking for a peaceful night in the woods. He never was. His channel was all about pushing the limits, stepping into the darkest corners of forgotten places, and staring straight into the unknown. But on this particular night, in a forest with a history steeped in disappearances and whispers of cult activity, he may have gotten more than he bargained for. It was January 2025. The air was sharp with winter's bite as Dan pulled into the empty campground, the towering trees swallowing his truck whole. There wasn't another soul in sight, just miles of dense, suffocating forest stretching endlessly in every direction. He had chosen this place for a reason. The stories, the legends, the unexplainable events, everything about this forest dripped with something sinister.
Midnight Forest, going with its name, has some very dark history to it. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, at the time of the Satanic Panic, this forest was linked to numerous disappearances known with cult activity. Let's start getting set up. Oh, I heard something.
And tonight, he was here to find out if those stories were real. As darkness bled into the sky, Dan pulled out his spirit talker, a device designed to pick up paranormal activity.
Alright, spirit talker is on. Little spirit talker by the fire.
It wasn't long before it started spitting out words. Random, disconnected, but eerie nonetheless. He asked questions, waiting for a response, but the only answer came from the woods themselves. A sound.
I literally hear footsteps. I hear footsteps and not like squirrel footsteps. Like
in heaven.
I just heard like actual footsteps behind me.
Faint at first, almost like a hushed voice carried by the wind, but there was no wind. Then again, louder, closer. Dan froze, his breath shallow. This was terrifying beyond one can explain. Then there was another sound.
What was that?
Dan's heart pounded. That wasn't an animal. That wasn't the wind. And he wasn't alone. He decided to go to the safest places he could find there. His tent.
I'm gonna shut this off, go inside my tent, warm up a little bit.
Back at his tent, Dan sat inside, trying to shake the feeling. Maybe it was all in his head. Maybe the stories about this place had gotten to him. Then, he heard a noise.
There is, without a doubt, somebody or something outside of the tent.
Not from the woods, though. It was right outside his tent. A long, slow, dragging sound, like fingers trailing across the fabric. Dan's breath hitched. His body went rigid. He got out of his bed, wondering what thing would make such a racket in the dead of the night. It could have been an animal, or it could have been worse. After a few seconds, he got up and went outside the tent to see what was happening.
Yo, look at this. It looked like something just teared through here. I don't think it's from the night.
To his great surprise, the trees around the area had literally fallen down. It was as if something had torn from there to make a path for itself. As if this wasn't enough, Dan started to feel as if something was wrong.
It just feels like there's a weight on my chest. And something's going wrong. Which I don't know what it is, but I'm like on the verge of it feels like what I can imagine is a panic attack.
His chest started to feel heavy, and it seemed as if he was on the verge of a panic attack. Dan started to pack up and lit a fire because suddenly the cold had become bitter and the wind was starting to pick up. He couldn't shake off the feeling that something evil was there. So, if he wanted to get out of that place as quickly as he could, who could have blamed him? If this made your blood run cold, then you must watch the next encounter. The December air was thick with silence as Frank, the fearless creator behind Franco TV, stepped into the infamous graveyard.
Behind me is the wall of the graveyard, and it's completely secluded from the rest of the city here.
This wasn't just any cemetery. It was a place soaked in whispered legends where the dead were said to roam freely after dark. Most people wouldn't dare cross the rusted gates alone at night, but Frank wasn't most people. He thrived on unraveling the unknown, on peeling back the layers of the supernatural.
I'm gonna have to sneak my way back towards the front so I can make my way in. I'm trying to be as invisible as I can possible so I don't get caught. I don't want anyone knowing that I'm in here. I don't want any unwanted attention.
Armed with his camera, an EMF reader, and an unshakable curiosity, he was ready for whatever lurked in the shadows. But nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to experience.
Not another dog. I'm always getting chased by some sort of dog. Alright. I just want to first make sure there's nobody in here.
As Frank walked carefully between the graves, the sound of crunching leaves beneath his feet felt deafening against the eerie silence. He wasn't just watching for ghosts. He had to be sure there were no living intruders, no trespassers looking for trouble. The last thing he wanted was to mistake a real person for something paranormal. And then he saw it. A flicker of movement, barely noticeable at the edge of his vision. His breath hitched.
For a split second I did hear what sounded like a voice.
A shadow had brushed past the tombstones, fast, almost inhumanly so. Frank's instinct screamed at him to be cautious, but his hunger for proof overrode his fear. He swept the flashlight over the area, scanning every inch. Nothing. Just the old, worn gravestones standing like silent sentinels. Then came the voice. Low. Indistinct. Like a whisper carried by the wind. Frank stiffened. His EMF reader spiked violently in his hand. The device was picking up something unseen, something watching. His heartbeat thundered in his ears as he tried to make sense of it. Was it a spirit trying to communicate? Or was it something else? Just as Frank was about to move deeper into the cemetery, something stopped him dead in his tracks.
Where do you come from? Are you from here?
A figure, standing behind a tombstone. Not a shadow this time, not a flicker. A real human-like shape, half hidden behind the stone slab. He had checked the entire graveyard moments ago. No one was here. So, where had this person come from? He wasn't sure, but they were right there, just on the other side of the grave. Frank's mind raced. Should he leave? Every survival instinct told him to get out, but his curiosity chained him to the spot.
I seen something move by. I don't know what it was. It was the corner of my eye. I seen what just looked like a shadow, just kind of like brushing by there really fast.
Then, suddenly, he saw something out of the corner of his eye. Frank spun around, his heart hammering, but there was nothing. Just the empty, suffocating dark. Frank pressed on, his every nerve on edge. If he was going to uncover the truth of this place, he had to stay. He had to see it through. But then, the atmosphere changed. A new sound filled the air. Singing.
They're literally singing.
A woman's voice. Soft. Haunting. Floating through the cemetery like a lullaby for the dead. Frank froze. There, standing near the entrance of a crumbling mausoleum, was a figure. A woman. Motionless. Staring.
Oh, that is creepy. That looks like a freaking demon.
Frank's breath hitched. His camera trembled slightly in his grip. She wasn't just standing there. She was watching him. The melody poured from her lips in a language he couldn't quite place, each note thick with something ancient, something wrong.
It's a female.
Frank called out. No response.
¿Cómo se llamas? What's your name? Señora, ¿cómo se llamas?
She just stood there, locked in place as if she were waiting for him. His instincts screamed at him to leave. Every hair on his body stood on end. This wasn't normal. This wasn't right. He decided to turn back and go away from there.
Okay, I'm gonna get out of here. I'm nervous. I feel like somebody's gonna approach me from behind.
He turned and made his way back to the entrance, every step fueled by a raw, primal fear. Even after he was miles away, the questions gnawed at his mind. Who was she? What was she? And most unsettling of all, had she ever been human? Some mysteries are better left unsolved. And this was one of them. This was definitely terrifying. But the next one is worse. The forest was supposed to be peaceful. A place where the only sounds were the rustling of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, and the crackling of a warm fire. That's what Mark, the man behind Creepy Outdoors, expected when he set off on a camping trip with his friend in July 2022. An experienced outdoorsman, Mark had spent countless nights under the stars, embracing the solitude of the wilderness. But this night was different. The evening started as any other. The two friends set up camp, their fire burning strong, casting flickering shadows on the trees around them. They sat by the flames, sharing stories, letting the soothing sounds of nature lull them into relaxation. But as the night deepened, something shifted. The air grew heavier, and the usual symphony of insects and distant animal calls dulled into an unnatural silence. And then the sound came. A strange, piercing noise echoed from the darkness beyond their camp. It wasn't the usual call of a nightbird or the distant cry of a coyote. it was something else. Something neither of them could immediately identify. Mark, ever the adventurer, grabbed his flashlight and scanned the tree line. The fire's glow only reached so far, leaving the vast majority of the forest in complete blackness. His friend hesitated, wary of the unknown, but Mark had already made up his mind. He had to find out what it was. Without hesitation, he ventured into the darkness, leaving his friend behind to watch over the camp. The forest swallowed him quickly, the warmth of the fire fading with every step. His flashlight cut through the trees, illuminating the gnarled branches and thick underbrush. The sound had stopped, but an eerie feeling settled in its place, crawling up his spine like unseen fingers. He told himself it was just an animal, maybe an owl, maybe a fox. But something inside him whispered otherwise. As he moved deeper into the woods, the sensation of being watched grew stronger. Every crunch of his boots against the forest floor sounded deafening. Every rustling leaf felt deliberate. The trees loomed taller, their skeletal branches reaching toward the sky like clawed hands. His instincts screamed at him to turn back, but his curiosity pulled him forward. He wasn't afraid of the woods. He had spent years exploring them, but this time, something was wrong. Then, a twig snapped somewhere to his left. He froze, heart pounding, gripping the flashlight tighter. Slowly, he turned his beam toward the source of the noise, expecting to see an animal darting away. But there was nothing. Just the trees, swaying ever so slightly in the wind. The silence was suffocating. The night felt alive, like something was holding its breath, waiting. His skin prickled as he scanned the darkness. He was no longer sure if he was alone. The unease became unbearable. Mark finally decided it wasn't worth the risk. He turned on his heel and started making his way back, his every step quick and deliberate. But the feeling of being watched didn't fade. It intensified. He couldn't shake the sense that something unseen was just behind him, lurking in the shadows, keeping pace. He forced himself not to look back. Some instinctual, primal part of him knew. If he turned around, he might see something he wasn't meant to. When he finally emerged back into the glow of the fire, his friend immediately noticed his tension. Mark relayed what had happened, describing the unsettling stillness, the strange sounds, and the unshakable feeling that he hadn't been alone. His friend listened, glancing nervously toward the darkened tree line. They debated whether they should pack up and leave, but ultimately, they decided to stay. They convinced themselves it was just the mind playing tricks, the natural paranoia of being in the woods at night. But the forest wasn't done with them yet. The rest of the night stretched on in uneasy silence. The fire continued to crackle, but the usual comfort it provided felt hollow. Even the wind seemed hesitant to pass through the trees. Every so often, they would hear the faintest shift in the distance, a barely there rustle, a whisper of movement just beyond the reach of the light. It was as if something was circling them, staying just out of sight. And yet, no matter how many times they scanned the darkness, they found nothing. The hours dragged, each minute stretching unbearably long. Every instinct they had told them to stay alert. Wandering into the forest so late at night didn't seem like a good idea now, let alone camp in that area. They didn't speak much, both too aware of the unnatural stillness that surrounded them. The once peaceful night had turned into something oppressive, something that felt like a warning. They weren't supposed to be here. Moreover, the events of the night didn't fade with the morning light. That feeling, that thing that had been out there, still lingered in their minds. Did you find this horrifying? Then the next one will shock you. Life on the road is supposed to be about freedom. The open highway, the solitude of nature, the thrill of waking up somewhere new every morning. That's exactly what Rody, a YouTuber dedicated to off-the-grid living, had built his life around.
So this is my truck. It's a 2003 Tacoma. Got it set up with a camper shell and a little room in the bed.
Traveling across the country in his truck, he documented the beauty of independent living, finding peace in the wild and embracing the simplicity of a life untethered. But one night in 2017, his usual routine took a dark turn. Instead of nature's beauty, he found himself face to face with something much more unsettling. It was just another night of car camping. Rody had parked his truck in a quiet lot, ready to get some rest before heading off to his next destination. The back of his truck was dark, nearly invisible from the outside, making it the perfect stealth camping spot. As he lay there, drifting into sleep, the world outside was still. Just the occasional hum of a distant car or the rustling of wind against his vehicle. Then, at around 1:30 a.m., something changed.
It was probably around like 1:30 in the morning when I heard someone walking around my truck.
A figure emerged from the shadows. Hooded, slow-moving, deliberate. Rody, still inside his truck, barely breathed as he watched the man approach. The stranger walked up to the back of the vehicle, pulling out his phone and snapping pictures of the license plate. Click. Click. The sound was barely audible, but to Rody, it was deafening.
And starts taking pictures. It looks like on my license plate or something like that. I'm not sure why he was doing this. So I thought maybe, I wasn't allowed to park there and he was taking pictures of my license plate, but it's kind of odd to be doing that at 1:30 in the morning.
His heart pounded as he tried to process what was happening. Who was this man? Why was he photographing his truck? The stranger lingered. He circled the vehicle, moving with a calculated, almost predatory energy. He wasn't just passing by, he was studying the truck.
And whenever you're sleeping, somewhere public and you hear somebody walking right outside your truck.
At first, Rody thought maybe it was just a curious passerby. Maybe someone thought the vehicle looked interesting. But as the seconds stretched on, it became clear that this man had other intentions. The darkness inside the truck was Rody's only advantage. From the outside, it looked empty, just another parked vehicle in the lot.
He tries to shine his flashlight into the back of my camper shell, you'll see here in a second.
The stranger seemed unaware that he was being watched, that there was someone inside recording every move. He moved closer, inspecting the truck like a predator sizing up its prey. Then, without warning, he pulled out a flashlight. A thin beam of light sliced through the darkness, sweeping across the side of the truck. The stranger peered inside, trying to see if there was anything, or anyone, inside. Rody knew he had only seconds to act. He could stay silent, let the man get bolder, risk whatever it was he was planning. Or he could let him know immediately that he wasn't alone. Rhodey chose the latter. With a sudden, forceful bang, he slammed his fist against the inside of the truck. The sound exploded in the quiet parking lot, shattering the eerie silence. The reaction was instant. The hooded man flinched, his body jolting as if he had been struck. Then, he ran. No hesitation, no attempt to explain himself. Just a full sprint into the darkness, disappearing as quickly as he had appeared. Rhodey watched, breathless, his pulse still racing. Whoever that man was, he had been caught off guard. But the question lingered. What had he been planning to do? A harmless misunderstanding was unlikely. Maybe he was just a simple car thief. But his behavior suggested something more sinister. Photographing the license plate, circling the truck, attempting to look inside. Whether it was an attempted carjacking or something worse, Rhodey didn't know. Shaken but unharmed, he got out of the truck and looked to see if everything was fine, and he saw that his truck door was slightly open.
But it's always at either work or campsite. Oh guys, real quick, look at my door right here, and you'll notice it's a little bit cracked open.
It was locked, but it still gave a slight impression that it could be opened. So that was what attracted the person. That was why parking lots felt tainted and unsafe to him. Even after the incident, one thought refused to leave his mind. If he hadn't reacted in time, if he had waited just a few more seconds, what would have happened next? What do you think about that? Let us know in the comments below. That's it for today. If you enjoyed this creepy content, then hit that like and subscribe button and explore other videos on our channel. Thanks for watching.